So I initially joined for the insurance, and then it became this whole, I guess you could say, wonderful world of being able to connect with peers, being able to engage in continuing education. So I started going to the conferences, meeting members of the board at that point, and it was actually shortly after graduation that I had been invited to be a committee member for the ethics committee. And I found that fascinating because much of what we do, you could say there are clear-cut rules for some things, but other things are very gray because, you know, interpersonal dynamics between a therapist and a client, there are a number of gray areas and complicated areas to address in terms of what is an ethical or caring way to handle that situation. So I really enjoyed participating in looking at those ethical queries. I also became then involved in rewriting our standards of practice, so our ethics and standards of practice. And so then eventually I was invited onto the board, and then shortly thereafter asked to chair the ethics committee, which then became merged with professional conduct. And I guess I then got a broader perspective of all of the work being done by the board, the planning involved in the conferences. I worked on certification for a period of time. And then I became chair of governance and risk management. And it was at that point I was asked, you know, would I consider becoming president-elect? And while I would say it wasn't something I was aspiring to, what I wanted to do was to serve our membership in the best way possible. We have people in many, many different professions, many different regulatory colleges, and I think that makes for a really rich experience. And we've brought more people in to our fold, and I'm hoping to continue that and to continue providing benefits to the full range of our members. Yeah.
Any particular sort of goals in this next couple of years, or any milestones? Did you see sort of any, you know, long-term projects for the association, or some kind of evolution coming down the pipe?
Yeah, you know, if you'd asked me that question 6 months ago, I might have had a different answer. So again, owing to the pandemic, I think it's going to, it has, I guess you could say, it has changed the focus for Ontario, Canada, the world. So the priorities in terms of, say, connecting with government, that may shift because people are very much focused, for understandable reasons, on the pandemic. Having said that, you know, I think the idea, what I can say is wanting to offer for all of our members educational and continuing education opportunities, and then to look at our subgroups of members, because I'll give you an example. So HST exemption, or removal of the HST from services for registered psychotherapists, that's extremely important to our RP members. It's not something that's obviously going to be as important to our psych associates or MA psychologists. But you know, one of the things I'm wanting to build on is to say, to reach out to the members early on and to say, for all of you where we sit now, what are the priorities? So that's something I'm hoping to do early on, is to have a reach out to the members and ask them, what do they, especially within these really unusual times, see as significantly important to them? you could say we have two controlled acts within our membership. We have the controlled act of psychotherapy, and we also have the controlled act of diagnosis. So for either of those acts, if you're going to be engaging in one of them, to ensure that you are registered. And to know, and it can be gray. I know that there is a tool that has been provided. It's actually on our site when people are renewing to check, like there's a checklist. Am I engaging in the controlled act? So if you are, to ensure that you do go through the rigors of applying to the college. And if you're not, then to know the difference. Right, because you could say not everybody is engaging in one of the controlled acts, and therefore won't be or may not need to be in a regulatory college. Yeah.
Any advice to someone who's beginning a career as a mental health professional?
I think that the work we do, regardless of which aspect of mental health work, but the work we do is both rewarding and can be extremely challenging. And especially when starting out, but I would say career long, it can be really isolating. You're sitting in a session often with one person and dealing with very complex issues, and that's just the sessions. Then there are all the rules, the regulations, the paperwork, etc. And so what I would say is, joining a professional association is really helpful, because you can have that sense of community, or I guess you could say meeting people in your tribe who are there as a ready resource and to bounce ideas off of, and say setting up peer support groups as you make those connections potentially. It also affords, say, in addition to member benefits, such as the insurance and other member benefits that are good for our minds and bodies, it does afford us that opportunity to engage in continuing ed and to meet with our colleagues. So I would advise anybody to join, even to join as a student, because at that point, there is that reduced sense of isolation, and there is that ability to network, even in terms of looking for jobs or career paths. Yeah. We have a really diverse membership, and I think what's key is connecting people appropriately. So if I'm looking at a client, again, it also helps to reduce wait list. So if somebody is requiring of a diagnosis for whatever reason, either to get their insurance coverage or through their workplace, if they're needing a diagnosis, then that addresses a certain, you could say, area of our membership. Our psych associates are MA trained psychologists. If somebody's needing an assessment, then that person, you could say, it should appropriately then perhaps be routed to a psychometrist at that point. And if somebody's needing treatment, then they can be referred to, depending upon the situation, a counselor or consultant or a registered psychotherapist. So I think it's a matter of looking at the broad picture, looking at that person as a whole, and saying, okay, what does this person need, and how do we bring the services, a full spectrum of services together to reduce the wait lists for all, while at the same time getting that person into those services and connected as quickly as they can be. And again, because I have a mind-body bent, I'm also including medical doctors. When I work in the clinic, I often had worked extensively with people with chronic pain, and again, it's that matter of connecting somebody with the appropriate service. So the doctor is going to see that person for some aspects of pain management, and then I would see that person for other aspects of pain management, right?
Right.
I'm thinking about the upcoming conference. And I've always found the conferences to be wonderful and engaging, and I'm I'm eager to see, because of the pandemic, we've switched to a virtual format, what that means for our membership. And I'm hoping that the upside is that people who might not have been able to, say, either afford to come into Toronto, where our conference is held when we're holding it face to face, may be able to connect, if they couldn't afford the time or the travel expense to come to Toronto, that they may be able to connect from their home.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah,
I appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
thanks. Have a good
Okay.
one.